Okay, so it's comforting, I think, for us in our feelings of ourselves as individuals to think about reality is a thing out there, and it's very stable, and there is something basic and true about it and unchangeable. But it's not necessarily clear that that's what is actually happening. And my feeling, I'm trying to think where to start with this. So first of all, when you talk about an emergent property, it's something that happens because everything else is the way it is. So, it's based on what the beginning state of where you are is. And sometimes you talk about, well, I'll talk about that process a little bit later, but so if you think about how all of us are interacting with this world, and we've got all this stuff going on, we've got our internal parts and our external parts and our personality and what's happened to us, and if you just think about, maybe the reality of the self, first of all, who you are, it's actually a result of all of these interactions that you've had, all of these things that have happened to you, all of the genetics that you've experienced, the ways that your personality has interacted with your environment. So there's kind of this sense of who you are, but if you had a whole different set of interactions, you might be something else. So that's kind of an emergent property, is that what is a result to a certain degree of what is. And I kind of did some work with this when I was in college about why is it that some molecular, some genes are dominant and some genes are not dominant. And if you look at it, it seems to be that the reason some genes are dominant and some genes aren't dominant is because in the whole system of all the interactions in the cell that are going on, some particular enzymes are just more likely to produce their products than other enzymes are, and so those genes become dominant because of their place in the system, and yet they create this whole system. So does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, it does.
There's recursion about what happens because
it's not
everything,
final.
because nothing is closed off, because everything is affected by and affects other things. So those are two huge examples of the biological basis of how a body reacts, and who you are as a person, which are it happens that way just because that's sort of the natural way that things develop in this very complex system. And I think that on a very basic level, probably the most basic level, that's what reality is overall. That this is the part of the wild speculation part, but I suspect that if you get on the subatomic level, that things happen the way they do because patterns start to be formed in the way that, say, energy or the beginning parts of matter interact with each other, and those beginning ways that they interact with each other influence what has the ability to happen in the future. So it's almost like if you think about like a stream being cut through a rock. The stream, water goes there because water has gone there in the past. And once you've got the cutting through the rock, the water is much more likely to take that path than some other path. And I think that that's true kind of overall about how reality works. So that sounds really, really highly speculative, and it is highly speculative, but it does have some influence over how how we work a little bit in that, you know, maybe you're cutting another path. Maybe you're cutting another path with the river. Just a little bit. And then maybe you can start to have things flow in a different way than they would have otherwise.